Hello, welcome along to the Happy Wee Health Club's education session. Today's topic is my favourite muscle in the body, the pelvic floor. So my name is Katie Galbraith. I'm a level 4 Pilates and postural and movement specialist, and I absolutely love to really empower everybody to really understand their bodies and really understand why the pelvic floor is so important. So today's session, we will look at the 4 unstable areas in the body because the body is completely connected from head to toe. So it's important to realise why the rest of the body affects the core and the pelvic floor. We will learn the key functions of the core muscles and why the pelvic floor is so important. We'll look at what happens when the pelvic floor becomes dysfunctional and how we can improve our core strength and, of course, our pelvic floor functionality. So let's get right into it. The 4 unstable areas of the body are the foot and ankle complex, so the ankle joint, the hip joint, so that big ball and socket around the hip, your spine, and your shoulder complex. Now, the knee is not classified as unstable because the knee can only really do that hinge forward and back, and it is the hip and the ankle that actually make up whether or not that there's an issue in the knee. So these areas, when we get muscle imbalances around the shoulder or the hip or the spine or the foot and ankle, they do cause like a domino effect, either on the opposite side of the body or higher or lower than that joint. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. If you do want more understanding on this area, then please do get in touch with me at the Happy Wee Health Club. So let's take a look at the muscles which make up the core. So these are the muscles which support the spine. So if we think about those 4 unstable areas, the spine is supported by our core muscles. Now I'm going to stop sharing this for just a moment so that I can explain to you what the core muscles are. Now, because I'm so fancy, we are going to use my very handy bottle to demonstrate the muscles of the core. So I want you to imagine, if you can please, that this is your spine. Okay, now round your spine you've got this big corset of muscle called the transverse abdominal, and that helps to stabilize and support your spine. You've then got lots of other muscles that support that. You've got muscles that run up the back of your body that help keep you upright. I'm not going to go too technical with these. You've got your waist muscles, your obliques. And this is working beautifully for me already. At the top, which sit underneath your rib cage, is your diaphragm, and that connects right down to here, the pelvic floor. So your pelvic floor is the foundation of your core muscles. Now, the function of the pelvic floor is to keep everything in, keep all your internal organs inside of you, and of course, relax to allow all of your urine and your poo out. Yeah, so they need to have both of those functions. Your pelvic floor needs to be strong to keep everything in, and it also needs to relax to allow everything to come out. Now, when this becomes dysfunctional, and I don't know if you can see this, I'm gonna lift this up. Can you see? I don't know if you can. This is leaking, right? So this is what happens when your pelvic floor becomes dysfunctional. We get these little leakages, yeah, from the front and the back sometimes as well. That's enough. It's leaked all over me. I'm going to look like I've got some problems here. So it's so important that not only are we strong right around our tummy, but we can then engage our pelvic floor and our diaphragm, and all of these muscles work together. Yes, so they work together. And for some reason, we only really talk about our pelvic floor muscles when there's a problem with them or when they become a bit dysfunctional. Whereas actually, when you're coming to do a workout and you're really focusing on your biceps or your tummy muscles, your pelvic floor needs to be worked just like any other muscle in your body. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again and we'll continue along our education. Dun, dun, dun. So that's us. We've had a look at what make up those core muscles. And the foundation is the pelvic floor, right? We wouldn't build a house without putting that foundation in first of all. Now the core muscles, as we've talked about already, support the spine. The core muscles must activate before we lift something heavy. So before I pick up my shopping, before I pick up a barbell, before I pick up my child, my core muscles should activate, they should engage before I pick something up. The reason being, they should support the spine. Now, when they become a little bit imbalanced, other muscles try and do the work for the core muscles, but they won't actually support the spine. Our core muscles should also react. So funnily enough, me and Karen were just talking about how there's a lot of research at the moment about balance with people coming back into the music industry that have fallen off a stage. And that is because their core muscles are not reacting quick enough to catch a fall. So if somebody bumps you in Tesco's with their trolley, what you don't want to happen is you fall over. Your core muscles should react. Or if you trip up over a curb or fall off a stage, your core muscles should react. And this one is key, this last but not least, endurance. Our core muscles are designed to stay on for long periods of time, so that when we stand with good posture and our core muscles are engaged. One of the things that turns off your core muscles is sitting down. A seated position, your core immediately thinks, I don't need to be on now. So it's so important that we are aware of that, and that if you do have something like a desk job or you are sitting for long periods of time, please do get up and move around as much as you possibly can. Now this is a little diagram so that you get a bit more of a visual on what these pelvic floor muscles look like. So in the bottom corner we've got more of a cartoon diagram, whereas at the top we've got a really great image of those pelvic floor muscles. So this is like if we're looking down through the pelvis, you can see that they make up this big parachute of muscles that sling underneath your body. They are literally holding everything in. So there's so many muscles there, and it's so important that we understand what they look like and where they are. So for a man, you can see that, and yes, everybody's got pelvic floor muscles, not just females. For a man, you can see that it comes right under the back passage and right underneath. And then for the female, we can see that it comes right under the back passage, right under the vagina, and then up to the urethra as well. So you can see that these are such important group of muscles. So why do these muscles weaken or become dysfunctional? Because it might not even be that they are weak, it might be that they are overactive and that actually they're hypertonic, so they don't relax. So as we were saying before, we need them to fully be able to engage and fully be able to relax. So for women, this is very much aimed at women on this side, because it's only women that can be pregnant and have childbirth and go through this. So for women, pregnancy, because of that added weight to the front, we're stretching out all of our pelvic floor muscles and our core muscles, and we've got that added pressure pushing down onto our pelvic floor. Childbirth, we're putting those two separately because obviously if it's a C-section, it's a little bit different. We're actually cutting through those layers of tissue. So quite often I've heard people talking about the fact that because they've had a C-section, their pelvic floor is going to be okay, but actually it is that added pressure, and then with the C-section, we've actually cut through lots of layers of our core muscles, and then we end up with tissue damage as well. So we end up with that fascia, so that tissue that supports our muscles becoming tight and actually becoming a bit immovable. We then have menopause. That has a massive effect on your pelvic floor because of your hormonal changes. So that lack of estrogen, progesterone and testosterone can change how your muscles and your pelvic floor muscles engage and react. So it's super important that we are aware of these changes that can cause an effect on the pelvic floor. Now, over the other side, we have all the reasons for men and women to become dysfunctional with the pelvic floor. So age, the pelvic floor is a muscle. As we know, as we get older, our muscles do weaken. So age is a big factor. Weight, whether we're overweight or obese, and we've got that added pressure pushing down onto the pelvic floor, that can cause strain and stress through the pelvic floor muscles. Certain conditions, MS, diabetes, stroke, they all have a massive impact again on our muscles, on that connection from nerve to muscle, so that can have an effect on the pelvic floor, and different medications can also have an effect on your pelvic floor. Lifting heavy weights, now I've put this in here, but it's lifting heavy weights without controlling this, right? Your pelvic floor, your core, your diaphragm, having that co-activation. So adding weight without having that activation. High impact, again, all that added stress onto the pelvic floor muscles. Intra-abdominal pressure. So this is when we do things like we cough or we sneeze or anything like that, puts that added pressure onto the core, and that's when we come into that reaction. Have we reacted to that sneeze or the cough, or are we going to put the pressure straight down onto the pelvic floor? I've put coughing and smoking in there as well, because again, that will increase the coughing and then increase the effect on the pelvic floor. Constipation and straining, so actually that downward pressure has an effect as well. Now, things to be aware of as well, something that I haven't put on here is surgery. So for men, we've got the prostate surgery. Sorry, that's what I should have said on that previous slide, that this the pelvic floor does come underneath the prostate. That was the word I was thinking of in my head. So any surgery that we've had down in that pelvic floor area, or any issues through childbirth or C-section, or any sort of hernia, any sort of surgery that you've had around your stomach can have a massive effect on your pelvic floor as well. And I'll show you why in just a moment. Something to be aware of, or a little note at the bottom: stress or overworking these muscles can make it to the point that we are unable to relax these muscles. Now, unfortunately, we have the same symptoms of dysfunctional pelvic floor when the muscles are overworked to when they are weaker. So that is just something to be aware of as well. Okay, so let's take control back of these muscles. So just before I move on to this, when I was talking to you about the surgery, so I want you to think now, if you've had surgery and you've got like a scar here, for example, the fascia then knits together. So I'm going to have a wee squeeze here. Now what you'll find is that when you're moving forward, you won't really notice that, but as I start to pull away from that scar, my body's really clever, I naturally pull away from that, and then I become a little bit imbalanced with certain movements. Now, as soon as our muscles become a bit imbalanced, then that causes more load into one side. Could be that one side of your pelvic floor is working harder than the other, and it's harder to completely relax the pelvic floor. So, how can we improve our pelvic floor function? Now, I must absolutely put a disclaimer out here. If you are having serious issues with your pelvic floor, if you are really struggling to hold your urine or your feces, or you're finding that actually you think you might have a prolapse. So that a prolapse is when part of your inner tissue actually starts to come down. So you might feel that downward pressure. I would please advise you to go and find your local female or male, but female physiotherapist. So the physiotherapist that really understands women's health. Yeah, women's health. That's really, really, really important. If you want to know who those are locally, please do ask. Otherwise, what I'm suggesting is that you do some work around strengthening and relaxing your pelvic floor muscles. Now, a great way to do that is to come to a Pilates or a yoga class. So you will find those at the Happy Wee Health Club. You can come and get a one-to-one with me over at the Happy Wee Health Club. Just send me a little message, either through Facebook or katie@thehappyweehealthclub.com. But things that we can be doing now are breathing exercises. So really focusing on breathing into your belly, breathing into your ribs, taking full breaths and fully exhaling and relaxing. So that's how we can relax our pelvic floor muscles. And then again, you will find some Pilates pelvic floor exercises either on our YouTube channel or over at the club. If you would like some more information, then please do get in touch. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.